Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing on this snowy Thursday? Dan Kasper Show on the air on your radio dials of 105.1 FM, 790 AM, also online at sportstalk1051.com. You can stream it there. Check the video stream out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff there. And of course, the Sports Talk app in your Google and Alexa home devices. But happy Thursday. Happy Thirsty Thursday. If you're already up and at it, pretty snowy out there. So we've got lots of either school closings or delays or virtual learning for some schools out there. You can head to sportstalk1051.com for the latest school closings, delays, and virtual learning updates, I guess, maybe, presented by Hovland's and Service Master of Chippewa Valley. Like Altoona's a virtual learning day. We've got Eau Claire, that's a virtual learning day. Chippewa Falls is closed. So it's a mixture, and the list is long. It's long. So, again, you can hit up our website, sportstalk1051.com, for the latest school closings, delays, and to see if your school's a virtual learning day or not. Brought to you by Hovland's and Service Master of Chippewa Valley. What do we got on the game plan here this morning? We got a few different things up and at it here this morning. We're gonna talk some Bucks. I know they're got another off day today, another off day tomorrow. Then they'll be back at it against Cleveland on Saturday. But we are a little bit over halfway through the Bucks season right now. They've played 45 games, so a little over halfway, a few games over halfway. But with this kind of like little mini break, if that's what we want to call it here, I want to ask you, and we know the trade deadline's coming up in a couple weeks. We've highlighted that. We've gone over the rumors and reports and some potential targets that the Bucks could maybe try to get before the deadline. But let me ask you this. If everybody's healthy, which includes Chris Middleton, Giannis, and that, given what you have seen so far this season, and that includes the entire Eastern Conference, do you think right now this current Bucks team has enough to get through the Eastern Conference? Do you think they've got enough? All things healthy, do you think they've got enough to get through this very top-heavy Eastern Conference, led by Boston, who's up there 33-12. Milwaukee's 29-16, 4 games back from first. Philly right behind them, 28-16. You got Brooklyn, 27-16. Cleveland, 28-18. That's your top 5 right there. Top 5 teams all within about 5.5 games here. So given what we've seen so far in the Eastern Conference, Boston team looking pretty sharp coming off their appearance in the NBA Finals last year. Philadelphia, maybe kind of starting to click finally over there with Harden and Joel Embiid playing together. Brooklyn up there with KD and Kyrie. Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell, MVP candidate so far this year. When you're looking at the top 5 in the Eastern Conference, the Bucks are the one team that has the lowest point differential. They're at a plus 1.3. You got Boston, that's a 6.5. Philly, a 3.7. Brooklyn, a 3. Cleveland, a 4.5. Do you think the Bucks have enough? Do you think right now, are they good enough to get through that Eastern Conference? Or do you think they need to make that move? Maybe you're like, you know what? I want another shooter or want another defender. 3-and-D type of player. Think about that for a little bit. We'll hit that up a little bit later on here this morning. Brewers. We're actually going to talk a little Brewers on this snowy Thursday. They had an event yesterday, Hot Stove and Cold Brews. So some players and Craig Counsell and such interacting with some of the Brewers faithful and such. But Willie Adames was one of those players who was partaking in this event, and he was asked if there's been some talks about an extension, and no, there hasn't. He said, I think I've said it before. I'd love to stay. I love the city. I love the fans. I love playing here. We haven't had any conversations yet, but I'm always ready to listen to see what they have. So I'm throwing it out to you all. Got a lot of questions for y'all because I want some participation here this morning. How big of a priority should it be for the Brewers to keep Willie Adames and sign him long term? We know we got Corbin Burns. We know we got Brandon Woodruff. You know, they're going to get a new contract here. Willie Adames is probably, and I kind of hesitate to say that a little bit, but probably going to get a lower deal compared to like Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and such. Probably like a long-term extension. So does that make it maybe a little bit more like, yeah, you know, let's get that one done because it's probably going to be a little bit cheaper. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'd rather, you know, priority wise, Corbin Burns is my number one. But realistically, you think the Brewers are actually going to be able to hold on to Corbin Burns long term? You know, I know a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the lack of free agent movement from the Brewers, you know, I was like, well, hey, maybe, you know, trying to think positive. Maybe they're trying to get some long-term deals done with like Burns here or such. Well, it hasn't been Adames apparently that they've been talking to about a long-term deal. So I don't know. But how big of a priority do you think it is for the Brewers to hold on to Willie Adames? And maybe that priority kind of goes down a little bit for you because they're already paying Christian Yelich a boatload of cash. So you're like, nah. Or maybe you're thinking, hey, they got a couple of their youngster pitchers locked up with Peralta and Aaron Ashby. So let's lock up another offensive player. I'm curious to hear from you, Brewers faithful, how big of a priority Willie Adames is. How big of a part of maybe the next few years for the Brewers. So we'll throw a little Brewers talk in there. And speaking of which, with the few years here, something I was thinking about yesterday when I was kind of thinking about, you know, maybe like a question of the day or such. But, you know, obviously there's been some angst about Green Bay recently and, you know, what the future is going to be like. Is it going to be Aaron? Is it going to be Jordan Love? You know, it's an unknown. It's a great mystery, right? So I was thinking about, and then, you know, we got Badger football that everybody's kind of excited about with the Luke Fickell era. And we were just talking about the Brewers there. You know, is this going to be the last year with Burns and Woodruff? You know, if you've ever been like on a job interview and sometimes that interviewer will ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Or what do you know, what are your goals within the next 5 years? You know, some sort of phrasing of that question. So I'm going to ask you, and this is where we're going to kind of deep dive or kind of talk about here in a little bit. Where do you see your favorite teams? And if you're listening, maybe you're not a Packers fan, but you're a Lions fan and you want to, you know, kind of throw that out there. You can do as many of your favorite teams as you want. You want to do Packers, Bucks, Badgers, Brewers, whatever. Hey, more the better. But where do you see like the Packers 5 years from now? Where do you see the Brewers 5 years from now? The Bucks, Badger football, Badger hoops, Marquette hoops, whatever. Where do you see your favorite teams 5 years from now? Because we've kind of got a mixed bag here, don't we? You know, we got the excitement about the Luke Fickell era starting with all the transfer players coming in. We've got this big unknown and with Rodgers and Love and salary cap issues with the Packers. We've got this unknown with the Brewers, whether they're going to be able to hold on to one of their pitchers. Bucks, you know, Giannis. Think he'll still be there in 5 years. It's really a mixed bag when we kind of look at these Wisconsin teams, right? So pretend you're in an interview when you've gotten that question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I was just asked about that the other day. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? So let's flip it a little bit and say, where do you see your favorite teams in 5 years? You see one of them winning another championship? You see one of them getting down in the dumps? What do you got? We're going to continue our Packers offseason scouting report too. We're going to take a look at the wide receivers today. Should the Packers bring in a different veteran wideout? Should they invest in a veteran wide receiver? Or should they focus on keeping the likes of an Alan Lazard or Randall Cobb? Or just run with the young guns? And maybe does that depend on who's playing quarterback for the Packers? So we'll hit that up as well. We'll get to I'll have to double check with Jake if we're going to do an outdoor tidbit just because of the weather out there. So if we do it, that'll be at 8:30. It is a Thirsty Thursday, so if you want to give a shout out to anybody, you can hit us up with a text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, 715-830-1912. We'll do a little fired up a little bit later on as well. What's got you fired up, whether it's a good thing or maybe it's a little bit of a downer sort of thing. But you can hit us up with that text there too. Or find me on Twitter at DANKASPER, Facebook.com/Kasper Sports. So, I just saw ESPN Buster Only busted this out. No pun intended. They've already got power rankings for Major League Baseball. How about that? Any guesses where the Brewers are lined up? Okay, this is actually higher than I thought they were going to be. 13th. Okay. That's definitely higher than I thought they were going to be. I thought maybe closer to the 20s, but the 20s are at 14. Right behind them, the team in front of the Brewers is Cleveland, and St. Louis is at 11. That's the highest NL Central team. So it's St. Louis at 11, Brewers at 13. Okay. Cubbies at 21, in case anybody's wondering right now. We might have to bring that up when we get to our Brewers topic or our Brewer segment this morning. All right, let's get things rolling, though, on that opening drive. Where do you see your favorite teams within the next 5 years? Do you think the Packers are going to have to pay the piper and they may have to be in the dumpster towards the bottom because they've put so much, cap hits in the future? Bucks, still going to be around. Bucks still going to be competing, maybe being a threat to win an NBA Finals, or maybe you think within the next 5 years they've got another championship. Brewers, will they go on a run of making the postseason for 4 years in a row again, 5 years in a row? Badger football, can they actually, with all the excitement, with the Luke Fickell era, can they actually maybe compete in a college football playoff? Do you think that'll happen in the next 5 years? Let's have some fun with some of these predictions and thoughts, all right? I want yours. I'll go through mine, and we'll open up the phone lines there too a little bit later on to get your thoughts on that. But we'll take that break, and then opening drive. We'll get you going here this morning, getting your brain working here a little bit. 5 years from now, the 5-year plan, right? How do we see it playing out? We'll discuss. Big night last night, too, for Blue Gold's hoops. UW Eau Claire men's team picking up the W against UW Stout, 95-86. And the women's team picking up a huge win against Stout, 85-59. Now the women's team's sole possession of first place in the WIAC conference. So big nights for both hoops teams, and then the women's hockey team going to skating to a 2-2 tie against Augsburg last night. Again, reminder, we've got plenty of schools right now who are either doing virtual learning, delayed, closed. You can get the latest at our website, sportstalk1051.com, brought to you by Hovland's and Service Master of Chippewa Valley. Opening drive here this morning. I'm trying to get your brain juices to think here a little bit, and I want your thoughts. I want your predictions or analysis. Try to get your crystal balls out or whatever have you. However we want to phrase this thing. It's the 5-year question. You know, we get asked it if you ever go into a job interview or such, or if you're ever doing an interview and somebody says, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's the life plan for 5 years?" Well, let's kind of spin that around here a little bit, because I think when we kind of look at our Wisconsin teams, we've got a mixed bag here. We've got maybe some optimism and the arrow trending upward for a couple of these teams, and maybe it's going downward for a couple other ones here. So you can pick one. You can pick as many as you'd want to go through. I'm going to go through a few of them here. My personal thoughts on it all. Let's start off with the Bucks, as they're the ones that are, they're a team that's playing right now. So 5 years from now, what's the 5-year plan for the Milwaukee Bucks? Giannis, right now, that I think the big question will be is Giannis going to be around or not? Giannis is 28 years old. Okay, he turned 28 in December. 5 years from now, he'll be 33. I think he'll still be playing at a fairly high level at the age of 33, right? As long as there's no serious injuries or anything like that that would kind of derail it. But I think he would still play at a high level at the age of 33, right? I feel like Giannis is still going to be with the Bucks 5 years from now. In fact, maybe I'm a little too optimistic in this thing. I know the Eastern Conference is deep this year and probably will be for the next couple of years here. But a 5-year plan, I don't see why there shouldn't be any reason that the Bucks shouldn't have another championship. So I think my prediction, who the heck knows if it's going to be right or not, I'm going to go. I think the Bucks have another championship within the next 5 years. I think Giannis will still be here in 5 years. I don't think Chris Middleton will be. Drew Holiday, that's going to be a little bit more dicey. Drew Holiday right now, he's 32 and that 30. So yeah, probably not gonna happen for Drew Holiday. But yeah, I think Giannis will still be hanging around a little bit. I think the Bucks, yeah, I'm confident in that. I don't know if Mike Budenholzer will be the head coach in the next 5 years. That one's a little bit up in the air for me, maybe about like a 50-50 at this point. If we're sticking with hoops and going to like Badger hoops, honestly, I feel like it's just going to be the same thing. And whether that's a knock or a compliment, I mean, I guess it depends on the person. But, I feel like they'll be competitive in the Big Ten. They'll continue to maybe preseason rankings kind of, get those low rankings and then maybe surpass them, have their ups and downs, that typical, they can maybe win every game but also lose every single game. I just feel like that's what this Badger basketball team's about. I think Greg Gard will still be there 5 years from now. I don't think any Final Fours in there. Maybe a couple Sweet 16s if they get hot in a tournament. But that's kind of where I see it right now, currently with this Badger hoops program. Couple Sweet 16s, and just it's a typical Badger basketball team. You know, those Frank Kaminsky, Sam Decker, and Nigel Hayes and Bronson Koenig. Here's maybe a little bit of the anomalies. Kind of hoping that that would be all right. That type of runs here, and maybe we're moving on. I think a lot of us kind of said this was going to be the last time this was going to happen. So, but no, I think that's where this Badger hoops team is going to be. Kind of a typical Badger hoops team. Top 5 in the Big Ten. The football one, though. Now, this one's hard to not get a little too excited about. Because we've done this before, right? We've gotten really pumped up and really excited about this Badger football team heading into a season. What, a couple years ago, cover of Sports Illustrated thinking they were going to be a college football playoff team. They were going to do it. Get there. And it was just like, it was the jinx. We've had these high expectations or high hopes with these kids coming in, these, highly ranked recruits, whether they were 5 stars or 4 stars or whatever. But I feel a little bit different about this. And again, maybe it's me being ever too optimistic. But with the Luke Fickell era, bringing in a different type of energy, bringing in a coach that, has been to the college football playoff, bringing in that mindset, that excitement. And, we haven't, I don't count the bowl game, but we haven't really seen, the coaching staff on a game or anything. So this is really just kind of projecting and trying to figure it out. But I don't see a national championship in 5 years. But if you were to tell me that the Brewer or the Badger football team would be in the college football playoff at least once in those 5 years, I might buy on that. I think I could buy that a little bit. I think that could happen. Again, it's kind of a little bit more of an unknown because we don't know how it's all going to work out, and we're all pumped up. We're all excited about, a quarterback room that's got 4 or 5, maybe when it's all said and done, 10 dudes in there. We got a couple of wideouts. Got Braylon Allen there. We're excited. We're pumped. Luke Fickell has done an amazing job, and his entire staff has done an amazing job of getting the fan base excited and this team excited. And I think that also goes to Chris McIntosh, the athletic director, and the athletic department, maybe the board too. Like, all right, if we really want to take that next step and we really want to start competing for a college football playoff or anything like that, yeah, you know what? I'm going to change it. I think a couple. We're going to get into a couple because it's getting expanded. Right? It's getting expanded. So, yeah, I'll say a couple. I'm optimistic. I think Luke Fickell and this staff is going to make a huge difference in that. Now, I know the Big Ten Conference is going to be tougher too, so you got to factor that into it. I mean, you're always going to have the Ohio States there. Michigan's going to be there. Penn State's going to be there. Then you're going to have USC, and we'll see about like how well UCLA is going to be if they can be consistent over there with Chip Kelly. I mean, it'll be a little bit different, but the expansion and this new coaching staff, yeah, let's go 2. Let's go 2. Maybe that's a little optimistic. For sure 1, but I'll go with 2. I'm feeling good about this Badger football team. Why not? Right? Why not? Do it up. How about this Brewers team now? Man. I mean, this one is one of the tougher ones because, again, this is This is a league that doesn't have a salary cap, yet this is a team that operates within a budget. So they kind of have their own salary cap. They'll still have Mark Anasio as owner in 5 years. I believe that. I think Craig Counsell will still be manager in 5 years. I don't see a World Series in 5 years. I see I'm trying to I'm going to go 2 playoff years. Right now, if I were to see like in the next 5 years, I'm going to go with 2 because man, this year it's so hard to gauge after this year because the Corbin Burns and the Brandon Woodruffs and the Willie Adames, and we'll get to, the Willie Adames thing a little bit later on if you missed it. I threw out the question, how big of a priority do you think it is for the Brewers to lock up Willie Adames, or do you think that, since they've got money into like a Christian Yelich, they got to focus on keeping one of their starters? But it's so like I can see a situation where like this year, if the Brewers, let's just say that, when it comes to the trade deadline, they're out of it. And it sure looks like they're not going to be getting to the postseason. They're not going to be in the playoffs. Could you see a scenario where they trade Burnsy and or Woodruff and start that whole rebuild sort of thing? I feel like, man, this one's a tough one because you got the owner, you've got Matt Arnold, the GM, you got Craig Counsell all saying that, every single year it's World Series goals, it's World Series aspirations. But yet, you kind of look at an offseason like now, and they got Contreras in as catcher, which I think a lot of people love that move, but we're still waiting for, well, is there a couple more coming? We heard the right stuff as fans, right? We heard the right stuff from the owners and the GM that we're going to compete. The goal is still World Series. We're still going to go after this. We're still going to do this. But it sure kind of seems like they're kind of running it back. Got a couple players here and there, but how much do you think they've really upgraded compared to last year? I think you can make the case for sure. Catcher, maybe a healthier Freddie Peralta makes a difference. Banning of the shift maybe helps out the offense a little bit more. But if I were to kind of go about it now, this next 5 years, I'll say 2 playoff appearances. No World Series. And I don't think they'll have Burns and Woodruff in the next 5 years. I'll say they hold on to Willie, but 5 years from now, he might be gone, like in a trade or something like that. Baseball's so weird. It's so hard to peg down players' futures in that. That's kind of where I've got the Brewers right now. Packers. All right, this one should be a fun one. I think it's safe to say, unless he decides to pull a Tom Brady sort of thing here and wants to play till he's like 50, Aaron won't be playing quarterback in 5 years. But the question may be, is it going to be Jordan Love that's playing quarterback in 5 years for the Packers? I will say yes. I will say yes, it's Jordan Love in 5 years. Now, that means that he had to have done something, either if it's going to be this upcoming year or in 2024. He had to have played well enough to get a new contract from Green Bay and to stick around and to keep that job. He had to have done something, or he's playing at a decent level. Probably a little bit more than a decent level if you're going to be the starting quarterback in 5 years. I don't know. Right now I feel it, and I'm not comfortable in it. No doubt, I'm not comfortable in it. And if you ask me tomorrow, I might change my mind. But right now, at this point, I'll say I'll say Love is the starter 5 years from now. Because I feel like even if Aaron comes back this year, Love's not going anywhere. And I feel like if Aaron comes back this year, this is going to be the final year, at least in Green Bay. Then it's going to be the Love era. But I don't see a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. I don't see that happening. I mean, they have got, at some point, will have to pay the piper when it comes to these contracts. The thing that, go back a couple of years ago, during the COVID era, something that a lot of teams had to do that beforehand, not a lot of teams did it because the comparison's like using a credit card a little bit. But during that COVID year, and then, when the salary cap went down after that, instead of going up double digits like it had been for so long, salary cap went down. So you had these teams trying to scramble, trying to stay maybe competitive like Green Bay did, and keeping their guys. So how'd they do that? They added voided years to these deals. Voided years, which is something that you kind of have to, like, for instance, for Green, the perfect example is Adrian Amos. It'll be interesting to see how the Packers go about with Adrian Amos because he's a free agent. However, he's got voided years to that. And if the Packers don't bring him back, okay, he's got a few voided years on that thing. The Packers don't bring him back. They have a cap hit. Those voided years will all come up, combine into a cap hit that'll be $7.95 million. And right now, according to Spot Track, if you look at that, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the ninth highest cap hit for a player who might not even be on this ball club. In fact, safety position, I think, is a position that Green Bay really has to figure out this offseason. The ninth and the 10th highest cap hit for Green Bay in 2023 is Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage. And I think there's a legit possibility, at least one, maybe even both not under. I think Darnell Savage will still be there, and maybe they try him at like a nickel corner. But they've got to decide what to do with Adrian Amos. If you resign him, then you can kind of alleviate those voided years and that cap hit. Green Bay might be stuck having to bring him back. But as we mentioned the other day, his play, according to Pro Football Focus, has kind of gone down the last couple of years. But that's the other thing with these contracts that teams are going to have to factor in, and Green Bay is one of those at the top with those void years. It's another dead cap hit situation. Teams didn't really do it a whole lot, but because of the COVID thing, it's how a lot of them went about business and trying to keep some of their players and still trying to stay competitive. Not every player has a big hit of a void year like Adrian Amos. For example, Aaron Jones, his voided years are in 2025 and 2026, but it's $770,000 a year. But I don't see Green Bay having another Super Bowl in the next 5 years. Playoffs? No, that's a tough one. I'll say, because I think Detroit right now, if I were to buy a stock in a team in the NFC North, I might buy the stock in Detroit. And that's still kind of a wild card. I think it's a big boost that their offensive coordinator is coming back and Ben Johnson. Can they carry that momentum from the end of this season into the upcoming 2023 season? And maybe now it's more of a destination place. Maybe some free agents are like, oh, wow, look at Detroit. That might be money talks. That's the number one thing. But maybe some free agents are maybe a little bit more open if they weren't beforehand to go to Detroit. I will. I'll go 2. I'll go 2 or 3. I'm struggling. 2 or 3 playoff appearances, and I'm not. I'm not overly confident in that. I think at least 2, potentially 3 playoff years in the next 5 years, starting like right now of January. What is it? 19th, 18th, 19th, January 19th, 2023. From now to the next 5 years, 2 or 3 times Green Bay will make the postseason, but I'm not overly confident in that either at this point. And I mean, we've seen teams. I mean, look at the Giants, for crying out loud, looked like a poo-poo platter, and then could they actually advance to the NFC Championship and upset their rival, the Eagles? We've seen it in sports. We've seen it in football. How many freaking times, anyways? One year or a lower level team like a wild card team making a run and winning it all. But Green Bay at some point is going to have to. They're going to have to pay their bills. They're going to have to account for these cap hits. It's going to come. You can keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, but at some point it's just going to get really, really bad. And you're going to have to make some tough decisions, which might have to be that word that nobody likes to hear, but rebuild. But for me, it's kind of hard to gauge would Green Bay actually go on a full end rebuild because they just locked up Elton Jenkins, they locked up Jair Alexander, they locked up Devon. They've got that mixture on there, so maybe they will never view themselves as a rebuild, but more so the reloads. But these next 5 years, when it comes to Green Bay, man, it's going to be interesting to see how this mindset works. It's going to be really, really fascinating to see how Brian Gutekunst, Russ Ball navigate these waters the next 5 years. Do they still want to be relevant? Do they bite their tongue and be like, yep, we're just going to have to cut the losses for this year? And, kind of like New England's first year without Tom Brady, they took that big cap hit with Brady still on there. Then they had more money the following year. Is Green Bay going to have to do that one of these years in the next 5 years? Just take on all that dead cap hit and just grind through it for a year and then, kind of reset? You'd think at some point they're going to have to. But if they can navigate those waters and still try to be a playoff contending team, that's job well done to them. How about the rest of you? All right, I kind of rambled on there enough now. But 5-year plan for your favorite teams or for our Wisconsin teams out there. 5 years. You can pick as many teams as you want to do. It's that age-old question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see your favorite teams in 5 years? Will any of them have a championship under their belts? The only one I picked for a championship, I've got the Bucs winning one more. Right now, if you were to ask me if all the teams who has the best shot to come away with a championship, I'd still pick the Bucs right now. And that kind of leads into another question we have for this morning, or another topic is, do you think right now, as we are a little over halfway through the NBA regular season, do the Bucs have enough right now to get through that Eastern Conference, a top-heavy Eastern Conference? We'll hit that up a little bit later on. We got to take a quick break, though. Your thoughts? Let me know. We'll be back after these words. Lots of fantastic things going on right now at the Chippewa Valley Habitat for Humanity. Make sure you're following their Facebook page because, man, they've been uploading a store, for example. They've been uploading some products up there and tips too to kind of refurnish some items out there. But also posting up some pictures of some of the home builds and repairs that they've been able to help out some families with. So some great stuff that they're doing right now. Chippewa Valley Habitat for Humanity. You can help out as well if you want to volunteer some time or maybe help out with some home builds and repairs. Just visit cvh4h.org to get some more details. And you can do a little shopping at the Chippewa Valley Habitat for Humanity Restore, located on 145 North Claremont Avenue. They've got some good stuff up there. I'm going to have to make a stop in there. No doubt about it. So, all right, we got a few minutes left to the top of the hour here. So I'll check out the texting line and such, and tweets and Facebook and all that good stuff. If you haven't had a chance to kind of make your predictions or looking into the future, if you will, with the crystal ball and that sort of thing. So, but we were looking for where do you see your favorite team or teams in the next 5 years, the 5 year life plan? How do you see it playing out if you had to make any predictions right now from what we know? So, no right or wrong answer in this, obviously, because we don't know what the heck's going to happen. Coming up next hour, we're going to hit up some Bucks and Brewers chats. Bucks wise, we're a little over halfway through the season, but given what you've seen so far, not only with the Bucks, but the rest of the Eastern Conference, it's pretty darn top heavy, right? Do you think right now the Bucks have enough to get through that Eastern Conference? They're second right now in the standings. They're four back from the Celtics. You got Philly right behind them. You've got Brooklyn right behind them. Cavs right behind them. What do you what do you think? Trade deadline coming up February 9th. And for you Brewers fans, how important, how crucial is it for the Brewers to lock up Adamas? Yesterday, their event, he said there hasn't been any talks about long-term extension. Wants to stay in Milwaukee. How big of a priority do you think it is for the Brewers to lock up Willie Adames? Realistically, like I'll tell you right now, I'd rather have Corbin Burns locked up, but do we realistically expect that to happen? Knowing it's going to cost, let's face it, Brewers might have to put out a record breaking contract for their franchise. Might have to do it. So you talk about, like Aaron Rodgers, if you're of the belief that he's holding, the Packers hostage a little bit with his contract. I know baseball doesn't have that salary cap, but we all know the Brewers have their own salary cap. So what do you think? We'll hit that up coming up in the next hour or two. Plus, we'll get to our or I should say we'll continue our scouting off-season scouting look with the green and gold. We're going to take a look at the wide receivers. Should the Packers bring back the likes of an Alan Lazard and or Randall Cobb because you think they need to bring in a veteran still, or do you think there's another veteran out there they should make a move for, or just roll with the youngsters? And does that all depend on who's playing quarterback, in your opinion? I think it kind of does. We'll get to that as well. Plus, fired up and your Thirsty Thursday shout outs. You can play along with those. We might do a little receiver defer too. So if you have any receiver defer questions to help out, send those babies on over. Last couple weeks, you all have been doing a fantastic job with the receiver defer questions. So send those puppies on over too. Okay. 1 hour in already on this snowy Thursday. Be careful driving out there. Get some news updates, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to kick off the second hour with some sports nuggets of the day. Second hour kicking off on this snowy Thursday. Be careful out there if you're out on the roads and traveling for work. A lot of school closings and delays or virtual learnings. You can check out the latest at our website, sportstalk1051.com. Brought to you by Hublands and Service Master of Chippewa Valley. Coming up this hour, we're going to talk some Bucks. Bucks are a little halfway through the season right now, a little over halfway. Kind of on like a mini bye, we could talk about, kind of phrase it that way, because no game yesterday, no game today, no game tomorrow, big game against Cleveland. But, it's kind of like, I think this is their longest. Oh, no, they got another 3-day break there in February before the All-Star break. But anyways, kind of like a little mini break here. So kind of looking at this team, do you think they're good enough right now, talent-wise, to get through the Eastern Conference, considering what we have seen so far, not only with the Bucks, but the entire Eastern Conference? The Celtics, pretty darn good, up 4 games on the second place Milwaukee Bucks. You got Brooklyn right behind them, Philadelphia right behind them, Cleveland right behind them. We know the trade deadline's coming up on the 9th. So what do you think? We'll hit that up. Coming up this hour, we're going to talk some Brewers as well. Willie Adames yesterday at their event saying that, no, the Brewers haven't talked to him about long-term extension. So do you think it is a big-time priority for the Brewers to lock up Willie Adames? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, it depends on how this year plays out? We'll hit that up shortly as well. Still looking for your picks for your 5-year plan for your favorite teams out there. Let's we'll get to some of your talks on, or your comments, I should say, analysis on that in just a little bit, but you still got some time to hit us up with that tweet, text, and Facebook comments, however you want to go about it here this morning. Let's do some sports nuggets of the day presented by Yancey Associates. Let's go 1952. The National Football League bought the franchise of the New York Yankees from Ted Collins. The franchise was then awarded to a group in Dallas on January 24th. Jesse Owens in 1953 was named Illinois Athletic Commission Secretary. In 1958, the Canadian Football Council changed its name to the Canadian Football League. Let's go with 1989. President Ronald Reagan pardoned George Steinbrenner. He was indicted on 14 criminal counts in 1974, then pleaded guilty to making illegal contributions to Richard Nixon's reelection campaign and a felony charge of obstruction of justice. All right. 1995, the NHL Board of Governors approved the sale of the Winnipeg Jets, officially clearing the way for the team to move to Phoenix for the 96-97 season. And a year later, in 96, they announced that the Winnipeg Jets, would move to Phoenix. Those are just some of your sports nuggets of the day, brought to you by Yancey Associates. Let's talk some Brewers here. So the Brewers yesterday, hot stoves and cold brews events, kind of interacting with some fans, players interacting with some fans, Matt Arnold, Craig Counsell interacting with some fans and such. But Craig Counsell saying with the event, the way life in the world has worked, we haven't been able to do this, connect with our fans. I think this year you'll see much more of that from us. So you had some comments here and there, obviously asked about the off season and such. Counsell saying, I'll tell you this, if you were disappointed about last year, if I go back 5 years ago, that's what I would have wanted. You want people disappointed about not making the playoffs. That's good, man. That's how it's supposed to be when you've worked really hard to create expectations. You don't want to walk away from that stuff. When you take a step back from it, it's exactly what you've tried to create. We had some disappointment. We live with that disappointment, and we get a chance to do it again. Willie Adames, he was asked about potential, long-term deal, new deal with the Brewers. He's still arbitration for next year, but him and the Brewers just settled on this year's arbitration, $8.7 million. But they have yet to have any sort of talks, any long-term talks about an extension, according to Willie Adames. Quote, I think I've said it before. I'd love to stay. I love the city. I love the fans. I love playing here. We haven't had any conversations yet, but I'm ready to listen to see what they have. So, my question to you, Brewers fans out there, how big of a priority is it for the Brewers to lock up Willie Adames? How big of a priority do you think it should be? Like, we know we got, and realistically, too, because we know Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, right? Those guys are going to get PAID paid. I think, don't quote me, but I would think Willie Adames would be a little bit more cheaper than one of those guys. And I'll just flat out say I'd rather have Corbin Burns. There's no doubt. I'd Corbin Burns is like number one. Like if we didn't have to worry about money and we didn't have to worry about a budget, Corbin Burns would be number one on my list. There you go. I just wonder, realistically, is Corbin Burns or Brandon Woodruff, do the Brewers have a legitimate shot at signing one of those guys long term? Do they have that legitimate shot? I kind of doubt it. And the other part of that too is like, because I feel like Corbin Burns is probably going to, let's just say, if the Brewers were dead set on keeping Corbin Burns, it's probably going to take a record-breaking contract in Brewers franchise history to keep him, like per year. And they're going to have to probably, I don't know, maybe would have to do like a Bobby Bonilla thing and keep paying him for years and years and years and years and years. But I think it would cost a boatload of cash. I think it would cost more than what Christian Yelich signed up for. Just my opinion. So, as much as I want Corbin Burns on there, maybe it's kind of the same thing where a lot of Packers fans feel like Aaron Rodgers is hamstringing the Packers because of his contract and cap hits. But then when you factor in Burnsy, it's kind of like, the Brewers do have that budget. They have their own salary cap. So if you spend a lot on Corbin Burns, how much are you going to have left over for other people out there? That's the only downfall to locking up a guy like Corbin Burns, is how much money are you going to have left over? Great, you've got a top-end starter. You've got a couple of cheaper other, Freddie Peralta and Aaron Ashby, you locked up long-term cheaper. You got Christian Yelich, which, we all know hasn't been playing up to that contract. By the way, he's got a new swing. If you haven't seen it on Instagram, he's got some videos up there of his new swing. No toe tap this year for Christian Yelich, it looks like. But it's still an unknown what you're going to get from Christian Yelich. So you lock up a guy like Corbin Burnsy. You've got Christian Yelich. You're going to have to really rely a lot on your younger talent and your younger guys. And you're going to have a lot of confidence that they can fill in those holes. I would love Willie Adames. I think, if Burnsy and Woodruff are kind of not going to be possible to get any sort of deal done, then I think Willie Adames is number one on there. I think he moves up to number one. And I think you have to factor into a little bit of the unknown of what kind of production you're going to get from Christian Yelich. If there's a legit shot of keeping Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and such, then I would go Burnsy, Adames, Woodruff. But I just don't know if they have that legit shot to keep one of those guys. So you take those two away, and then Willie Adames, I think, moves up. I'd like the Brewers to keep Willie Adames for a few more years. I'd like that to happen. I'm curious to see what Willie Adames' numbers are going to look. Rephrase that. I'm curious to see what a lot of these players' numbers are going to look like with the banning of the shift and such. And I think too, with the banning of the shift, you're going to have to really kind of focus more on defense in terms of those infielders covering a lot of ground, especially up the middle. So if you've got that guy at short that can help cover up a lot of that ground, you're not going to be able to plug in a guy, oh, lefty's up, putting another infielder over there on the other side of second base, putting him a little bit deeper in the right field, just touching the grass there. Can't do that. So I think the other part of this too is like you're going to have to make sure you have those infielders that can cover a lot of ground, can get to second base really quick, flip those turn twos. I feel like, we might see downward trend in some double plays this year. But that's the other factor in this too is defense and speed within that infield to cover that ground. But again, I don't know what the plan is for the Brewers this offseason. If Willie Adames if his representation really legitimately has not had any sort of contact or conversations about a long-term deal, what is Matt Arnold and his team kind of doing? Are they still looking for bargains and that such out there? Are they still looking for, or are they trying to work on long-term deals with some other guys like a Corbin Burns? Is that actually a thing? I know they signed Brian Anderson the other day, the infielder. He played for the Marlins. Can play a little outfield there too. Are they looking for those type of depth sort of deals? Is that their focus? We've heard all offseason the goal is still the same, going for a World Series, competing for a World Series, getting back to the postseason. But right now, do you think they've got that team to do it? Or maybe they think they do because of the changes with the banning of the shift and such. Maybe they feel like those offensive numbers are going to go up for them, for a guy like Rowdy Tellez and such. Maybe even a Christian Yelich. Interesting. All right. We got to take a quick break, and then let's continue our Packers offseason look, taking a look at the wide receivers here. What do you think the Packers should do in terms of Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb? Should they bring one of those guys back? Should they focus on bringing one of those guys back? Do you pacify Aaron Rodgers and bring in Randall Cobb back if Randall Cobb wants to continue to play? Do you pacify Aaron Rodgers and bring in Allen Lazard back? Or would you want Allen Lazard back regardless? Do you think Green Bay needs to go out and maybe get a different, more established veteran wide receiver out there? Hey, DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas are apparently rumored to maybe be available. Might spend a little bit more there. Or do you ride with the youngsters for year two of their young careers? Talking Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Samari Torre. How do you view this wide receiver group for the Packers this offseason? What would your game plan be? We'll hit that up then. More Bucks talk too. Do you think this is a team right now, if they're all healthy, good enough to win it all? Give me your halfway through the season assessment on this Bucks team. We'll be back after these words. Other day, just got a notice in the mail that it's time to set up a meeting with the tax guy. It's getting to be that time of year. Got me thinking, what can I do with my tax return this year? So let me ask you the same question. What's the plan for this upcoming tax season? Got a suggestion for you. I think it's time to use some of that tax return of yours on a new floor from Carpet City Flooring Center. Chances are there is a floor in your home that's in need of an upgrade right now. Living room have all that wear and tear and even some stains from over the years. Yeah, sure, there's probably some good memories and stories involved with that, but it probably looks pretty awful too. Kitchen floor need an update. That's where my wife wants to get a new floor put in, or hey, maybe even the rec room or the man cave. Whatever room needs that update in flooring, you only need to visit one place for all of your flooring needs, and that's Wisconsin's premier flooring store, Carpet City Flooring Center, right here in Eau Claire. Just stop on in at Carpet City Flooring Center and take a look at all the different selections of flooring they have. And if you have any questions, their team is so incredibly helpful. So put that tax return to good use and get that new floor from Carpet City Flooring Center in Eau Claire. Don't forget to subscribe to the Man Cave podcast for free on your favorite podcasting platforms. That's like Apple, Spotify, the big ones. You got Google, Stitcher, Amazon, or at our website, sportstalk1051.com. Got a new episode up yesterday. Man Cave Podcast brought to you by Toyson Ford and our good friends at Hy-Vee. You all know I'm like a big old history kind of nerd there, but I want to focus on telling some of the stories like in our area about maybe you never heard about. So there's one about Mr. Cub Buck and early 1900s, but he was the first big-time player signing by Curly Lambeau, but also the first ever head coach for the Miami Hurricanes. Yeah. Person who born and raised and played high school football in Eau Claire was the first big-time kind of signing by Curly Lambeau and the first head football coach for the Miami Hurricanes. Came right here, Cub Buck. So you can listen to that on the latest episode of the Man Cave podcast. All right, let's. I was kind of looking up, trying to find some market values for like what Willie Adames would be, and the one I found on here would be based on the current market values and the other stuff. They've factored it in as $209 million over 8 years, which is about $26.13 million average per year. If you do these, if you go 7 years, it's $189 million, $189 million over 7 years, which would be about 27. So just kind of a couple. Again, these are market values. These aren't, these are based off of what maybe some other contracts and comparing them to other players. That's why, like, if you go to Spot Track, and I'll be bringing it up here with Alan Lazard's market value, it's based off of production from similar players and what type of money and contracts they're earning on there too. So, but I was kind of curious, like, what's Willie Adames, and that's one of them. So you're looking at about $26 to $27 million per year. So factor that into it. Would you be good with it? I know I saw on Fangraphs. I think this was a few months ago. I was really bringing it up about, or there was that nugget out there about Willie Adames. I think it was Fangraphs that maybe had it at that point 150 million. That might be a little too low, but there's a good article on Fangraphs about comparing Willie Adames to some other free agents who got some big contract deals out there. So I'll have to look that up and maybe bring it back up here during the next break. Kind of refresh the memory there. Anyways, continuing our Packers offseason outlook, taking a look at the wide receivers now. So you've got Christian Watson coming into his second year. Romeo Doubs. There's a lot of bright spots between those two. Romeo Doubs more so in the beginning part of the season. Christian Watson at the end part of the season. You could definitely tell Aaron Rodgers had some trust with Christian Watson for sure towards the end of the season, threading the needle on some of those throws, and Christian Watson was rewarding that by not dropping the passes and coming up with some big catches and some tight windows. We saw, Samori Toure in limited roles Maybe he's going to have an expanded role this upcoming season here. But when you look at this wide receiving group, you got the 3 rookies there. Should Green Bay go out there and spend some of the limited money that they have and bring in another veteran free agent, maybe somebody of the likes of, a little bit better than the Sammy Watkins one, maybe spend a little bit more? Or do they focus on bringing back Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb? Or do you say just run with the youngsters? Let's just go with the youngsters right now. I think a little bit of it does have to depend on who is playing quarterback for the Packers in 2023, whether it's Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers. If it's Aaron Rodgers, you're probably bringing in at least one veteran receiver, possibly even 2, and maybe it is just Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb. But I think if it's Aaron, you're probably going to have – you're not just going to run with the youngsters, I don't think. Or you're not going to, your top 3 of those second-year guys, and then, you're finishing up the depth chart with a couple more rookies. Maybe you do that with Jordan Love. You might get away with doing that with Jordan Love. And I was kind of looking at, all right, who are some of the maybe potentially available free agents out there that you could bring in? I mean, you've got Marvin Jones. If you wanted to bring in a veteran 11 years in, his market value is $3.4 million per year. They've got like a contract where 2 years, $6.98 million. You've got Jacoby Myers from New England, who I know we talked about him before the trade deadline, that a lot of scouts kind of compared him to maybe like a Deebo Samuel type of role, and he's 26 years old. But the thing is, his market value, about $12.5 million per year. 4 years, $50 million. So you're going to spend a little bit more. He's younger, maybe a little bit more versatile, but you're going to have to spend a bit to get him. He is a free agent, but I guess I don't see him leaving anywhere as Juju Smith-Schuster. In fact, his market value, according again to SpotTrack, $14.6 million. We know he signed that 1-year deal up with the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I mean, we could go through this list, all morning if we really wanted to. But Allen Lazard, his market value is $11 million. 3 years, $33 million. Now, again, we can't necessarily look at the total cash, right? We got to look at what would those cap hits be. And we don't know that, obviously, because it's depending on how a team will structure it. How much of it is a signing bonus? How much of it is guaranteed money? That sort of thing. But let's use this 3-year, $33 million market value as kind of our base here. If that was the deal that he would get, he would be the 32nd highest paid wide receiver. But again, that's kind of up in the air because it would depend on other players and their contracts and such, right? But it'd be around 32. Is Allen Lazard the 32nd best wide receiver in the league? That's how some people are going to kind of throw it out there. Now, I love me some Allen Lazard, okay? I love me some Allen Lazard. I think he is one of those rare players that, Matt LaFleur called him last year a war horse. He does the dirty stuff. We know about his blocking, and he's a willing blocker. He's a big wide receiver, right? He's a nice possession receiver. He's not a number 1. I don't think he's a number 1. Could he be a number 2? Yeah, maybe. But he's between that 2 and 3. He's a guy that, you could throw it up on the sideline because of his height. You can use that as an advantage, go up there and get it. You can use him across the middle, bigger guy there. There's a part of me, though, that really felt like was Green Bay maybe not utilizing him enough, especially in the early parts of the season. And maybe that was based off of defenses kind of focusing on Allen Lazard, knowing he was the number one target for Rodgers and such. But I kind of felt that way with Lazard and Tunyon, especially at the beginning parts of the year. I would love Allen Lazard back for Green Bay, but I don't think you could do it for $11 million per year. I don't much. If we're talking, last year, Allen Lazard with a restricted free agency, it was a 3.9-ish million. If you could bring back Allen Lazard for, and this thing, Allen Lazard, he's going to, and I'm sure his agent's telling us too, he's going to be 28. This is probably going to be his first and last opportunity at a bigger contract. Right? So he's looking to cash in. He's looking to get as much money as he possibly can. Actually, he just turned 27 years old, but he'll turn 28 throughout during the season, later part of the season. But he's going to I don't think he's going to take a hometown discount. Anybody kind of throwing that out there. This is probably going to be his only shot at trying to get as much money as possible. Looking at that guaranteed money, looking at that signing bonus money. So as much as I would love to see Allen Lazard back in the green and yellow with that number 13, I just don't see it in the cards in terms of money. And will that piss off others? Maybe, but Aaron Rodgers has to be a little realistic too. Not to get back on the whole Rodgers sort of thing with what he said, because there's a lot of stuff now on Twitter and social media out there kind of saying like, the big one now is his MVP comment. Context matters, people. Look at the whole interview. I know Rob Gronkowski was, ragging on him, but it was fairly easy to tell that maybe Gronk didn't watch the whole interview. But anyways, one of the things I did maybe kind of have an issue with Rodgers throughout his comments were when he did mention Marcedes Lewis, Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard, Robert Tunyon, and David Bakhtiari. Great. He talks about them being locker rooms. And that kind of goes back to what he said 2 years ago about, wanting to keep these locker room guys, wanting to keep these leaders and that sort of thing. That's great. That's awesome. I get it. But at the same time, there's got to be an improvement in talent. There's got to be an improvement in talent, and there's got to be some level-headedness. That's not even a word, but you got to have a little bit of a level head when it comes to trying to figure out these contracts. He knows there's a salary cap. He knows there's a cap hit. So I'm sorry, Aaron, and I will say this. I will agree with a lot of you out there. If you really want to play with your buddies and you want your guys all with you, and it's clear that they're not the most talented at their position, but you still want them, you should have done more with your contract. You could have done a little bit more. He's got the 10th highest cap hit amongst quarterbacks. That's not that bad. But if you want to play with your buddies and yet you still want more talent, you could have done more. So I get it. You want your locker room guys. You want good locker room people. But there also comes a time, too, where you do have to improve the talent around you. And you know what, Aaron? You're a leader, too. Be more of that leader in the locker room if you have to be. But anyways, back to Lazard here in that case. So, yeah, I would love him on my team. But $11 million per year? Unless Green Bay can do that fancy contract where, let's say it's a 3-year deal and, you get your signing bonus, and you do the voided years, and then you just keep pushing the can down the road again, for crying out loud. It's like it's a 5-year deal, but the last 2-year deal, or last 2 years on that 5-year deal, is a voided year to kind of help spread the cap hit. But you're just kicking the can down. I don't know if that's worth it. I don't know if Allen Lazard's going to get $11 million per year on average. If he does, awesome. Go get it, man. He deserves it. Go get what you can get. But if that's what's going to cost for the Packers to keep Allen Lazard, I don't know if it's in the cards. I don't see it happening. I would love. I think they need to bring back bring in another veteran, regardless if it's going to be Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love at quarterback. Because otherwise, that's a very, very, very young wide receiver room. If your leaders are like heading into their second year, but it's got to be somebody that maybe has a little bit more of a history than Sammy Watkins, like a little bit more of a consistent history out. Whether that's Randall Cobb bringing him back for another year. Is it a guy like Marvin Jones, who was with the Jaguars? Is it somebody like that? Or is it somebody else out there? Like, I mean, Jacoby Myers, 12.5. Allen Lazard, 11. If you are going to spend money, who would you rather have? A guy who's being thrown out there as like a Deebo Samuel type of player that you can use some versatility, or a warhorse player, Allen Lazard? I think we know who Aaron probably would rather have, but talent-wise, if your goal is to get to the big game, what would you do? I think the big thing now is to see that progression from these young wide receivers. We hear about the sophomore slump. You hope it doesn't happen. And doesn't happen to every sophomore. Doesn't happen to all those guys all the time, but maybe in the back of your mind a little bit, it's like, okay, Christian Watson, he's on tape. People know about him, right? Romeo Doubs, he's on tape. Teams know about him. We're going to key in on him a little bit more. How can we bring in some guys to maybe help out a little bit, alleviate that, but also bring in some veterans? I'm kind of looking at Marvin Jones here, and you kind of look at, he started off with the Bengals in 2012, played a lot for Detroit. You're probably familiar with him over there. Last couple of years here with Jacksonville. But 16 games this year, 17 games last year, 16 games in 2020, 13 games in 2019. The only time he didn't play double-digit games was 2018 with Detroit. Is that a guy like if it costs $3 million to bring in a veteran like that? I think Green Bay, I don't know if receiver is necessarily going to be high on the draft this year. We'll see how the draft boards fall and such. But I think they'll, if I'm making a prediction on January 19th here, maybe kind of focus on the draft, or maybe focus on a wide receiver, mid-rounds, 4th round, maybe a 3rd rounder. Unless somebody's there at 15 that's a wide receiver that's like that Justin Jefferson type of role where you just like, you can't pass that guy. Then okay. But with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs kind of being the 1 and 2 as of now, they still need some more depth. I just don't know if it'll be a 1st-round pick or a 2nd-round pick. Maybe a 3rd-rounder. Because I feel like they still have to bring in a veteran or two, regardless of who's playing quarterback for the Packers this year. And maybe that veteran's different depending on who that quarterback is. If it's Rodgers, maybe you're bringing his buddies in. If it's Jordan Love, maybe it's a different veteran wide receiver. All right, we got to take a quick break. If you got any receiver defer, send those on over. Okay, usually we would do receiver defer right now. If you have any on over, send those. maybe we'll hit it up just past 8 o'clock or something like that. Otherwise, we got some Bucks chat I want to get to as well. We'll be back. Hi, hey, big thanks, Surveyor Sam, for the compliments on the latest episode of the Man Cave podcast. Awesome podcast, buddy. Great episode. So, I'm looking for that feedback like that. So, big thanks for that feedback, Surveyor. I don't know if anybody likes kind of the local history, that sort of thing, and kind of knowing those stories. There's a lot of them. There's a lot. We know about the baseball ones. We know about the baseball one quite a bit, right? But there's some interesting, some good other ones in some different sports there too, especially football. There's a lot of, well, let's just say kind of like NFL stories, or I guess they're pre NFL back in the early 1900s and such. But no, thanks, Surveyor. And if anybody else has any feedback, let me know. Appreciate that, man. All right. We got about 6 minutes. We'll do some receiver defer in the next hour. If you have any receiver defer questions that you can help us out with, text those babies on over 715-830-1912. Again, 715-830-1912. We're going to talk a little Bucks here. So the Bucks are a little over halfway through the regular season now. 45 games in. So a little over halfway, a few games over halfway. When you see this Eastern Conference, and you see how the Bucks have, kind of played in this first half, how would you assess the first half for the Milwaukee Bucks? And do you think right now, and let's assume that they're all healthy, which includes Chris Middleton, are they good enough to get through the East? Or are you a little bit worried about Boston right now? Because Boston has had a fantastic first half. I mean, they look pretty hot, 33-12. 7-game winning streak they're currently on right now, 8-2 in their last 10. You've got Philly right behind the Bucks. James Harden, Joel Embiid. You got Brooklyn right behind the Bucks too. KD, Kyrie, Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell has been fantastic for Cleveland over there. So I guess I'm kind of asking too. It kind of goes back to the whole trade deadline. Do you think a trade? Do you think they're missing maybe just one player? The East is so. I think if it plays out with these top 5 teams, and I know Miami's 6 and New York is right there too, but I look at these 5 teams that are 5.5 within 5.5 games of each other. If it plays out like this when we get to some postseason action, that's gonna be a lot of fun. That's gonna be a lot of fun when we get through maybe like that first round such. Even you got the play-in games there, so I mean like a 4-5 matchup if it's like Brooklyn and Cleveland or Philly, Brooklyn. I mean the 4-5 matchup is going to be insane. And then if it goes like all chalk into the second round or third round, if we count the play-in games as first round, I don't. Man, you can make the case. I think right now with the East, a few different teams coming out of there. I think the Bucks can do it. I just think the biggest thing right now is their health. They just got to get healthy. So I think they can get through the East, but I still think they're going to make a trade. And, factoring in that, they've had guys missing some time. Chris Middleton, missing a boatload of time this year. And they're still in second place in the Eastern Conference. Giannis has been missing some time. Drew Holiday was missing some time. Drew Holiday's been just lights out the last couple of games. I think the fact that they're in second place right now and they're, going through some of these injury issues or these health issues, I'd give them about B plus. Maybe that's a little bit hard for some of you out there, but I'd say it's a solid B or B plus. With that top heavy Eastern Conference out there and getting it done the way they've been getting it done, yeah. I just hope Middleton's knee issue isn't something that's going to bother him throughout the rest of the regular season and become an issue again when it comes to playoff time. But I don't know. Okay. The rest of you can make some picks if you'd like with a text, tweet, or Facebook, or comment on the video stream, and all that fun stuff. Coming up next hour, we'll do some fired up. What's got you fired up here? We'll also do a little Thirsty Thursday if you want to do some shout outs to anybody. If we get some good receiver defer questions coming at you, we will we'll play a little receiver defer in the next hour. Waiting to hear from Jake if we still want to do an outdoor tidbit. I know with the weather it might be a little difficult, but it sounds like Jake's going to be in studio next week. So we're going to do a little bit of a long form thing with him. But if you have any questions for Jake for outdoor tidbits, Jake, our Wisconsin conservation warden, you can let us know and we'll pass those along to Jake to help answer those for you. All right, so keep you posted. If we do get Jake on, it'll be about 8:30 this morning. Otherwise, we'll continue our fun little questions and topics that we got out there. In case you're just joining us in the first hour, we threw out the question. We did the 5-year plan. Had a little fun with this 5-year plan. You get asked that like in an interview or something like that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? What's your 5-year goals? All right, so let's flip that, adjust it, edit it a little bit for your favorite teams. Packers, Badgers, Brewers, Bucks. Maybe it's a different one. How do you see your favorite teams in the next 5 years? Any of them going to win a championship, you think? Any of them going to be a consistent threat in the playoffs? Dumpster diving? If you haven't had a chance to send us your thoughts, and there's no right or wrong answer to this because we don't know how the heck this thing's all going to play out, right? We don't know. Let's have a little fun. You don't know how your 5-year plan is going to work out. You got a 5-year plan, though. So let's have a little fun here with the your sports 5-year plan. Okay. So, all right, we'll get to that. We'll revisit that. Get to some of your comments on there as well, or your picks on there too. Jake just texted; he's good to go here this morning. So we'll have our outdoor tidbit coming up at the bottom of the hour. Our little quick combo with Jake out there. So again, we'll have a long form one with him next week when he is in studio. But I guess weather permitting, right? Kind of had a weird weather season, winter season so far here. All right, 2 hours in already. We got one more to go. We got some quick news updates, and then let's do a little fired up. We'll do a little fired up coming up in just a few minutes. All right, here we go on this final hour on this thirsty Thursday morning of the Dan Kasper Show. Big thanks to everybody tuning in, however, wherever you may be tuning in. Careful out there on the roads. I'm assuming they're still snow covered and a little slick in that. So if you have to head out there, be careful and such. I don't have a window in here, so I haven't actually seen how it's all kind of playing out right now at this point. But we have a lot of school closings or delays and virtual learning now, too. That's a thing, man. Oh man! But you can catch the list at our website, sportstalk1051.com. Brought to you by Hovland's and Service Master of Chippewa Valley. We're going to catch up with Mr. Jake Boakes, our Wisconsin Conservation Warden, at the bottom of the hour here. Next week we'll have a little bit more of a long form with him. So if you have any questions that you've ever wanted to ask a DNR person, now's your chance. All right. Now's your chance. Jake will answer them all for you. So if you don't want to give your name, you don't have to give your name either. So let's do a little fired up to kick off this third hour this morning. You know what's got me fired up right now? I am pumped about these playoff games this weekend. I think we've got some good matchups. It starts off with Jacksonville at Kansas City. That's your first game on Saturday. Then you got the Giants at the Eagles Saturday night. Then Sunday, which I think is a better day, but you got the Bengals taking on the Bills at 2 p.m. and then the Cowboys taking on the 49ers in a nice little throwback from the 90s there. I mean, if I had to pick one game that I think might just be a little bit of a blowout, I might take the Chiefs over the Jaguars. I might, that one might get a little bit, if more than a couple possessions, let's say. I'm intrigued with this Giants and Eagles game. I want to see if that Giants offense, if they can move. I don't know if they're going to be able to move the ball exactly like they did against Minnesota, because Philly's got a better defense. But if they can get pretty darn close to it, that should be kind of an intriguing game. How will the Eagles come out with an extra week? Will they be a little rusty? It's a division game. Can kind of, expect the unexpected when you get to these division games in the postseason. Then you got Cincinnati and Buffalo. We know there's a lot of emotion with that game. DeMar Hamlin has been in the facility, according to Sean McDermott. Yesterday, he's been in the facility, it sounds like, the whole week or for the last few days there. But we know that's going to be a very emotional game there. And then you've got Dallas at San Francisco. Can the Brock Purdy era love affair continue with the 49ers? Or can the Cowboys kind of go in there and upset the 49ers? I know Tony Dungy yesterday was on Dan Patrick talking about the disadvantage with the team that plays on Monday night and then, has to go on the road in the playoffs on Sunday. And like he said that, that's why he's picking the 49ers, is because, history tells you that teams that play on Monday then go on Sunday usually doesn't work out too well for them. My counter argument to that, though, would have been the Rams of last year. Rams played Monday night against the Cardinals, and then they played against the Buccaneers the following week. So that would be my only counter argument there, is that, well, the Rams were able to do it. So, and that was just last year. I was thinking about that yesterday when I was listening to him on the Dan Patrick Show there a little bit. But, we'll see how it all plays out. We'll make our picks tomorrow on our Football Friday when Brandon Berg is joining us there. But you can make your picks with us tomorrow too. Okay, who do you got? Who do you got advancing to the conference championships after this weekend? So playoff weekend, divisional round. That's what's got me fired up here this morning. We asked in the first hour your 5-year plan for your favorite teams. The majority of you, I'm not going to go through everybody's. I'm just going to kind of like find a common theme here. But the majority of you have said that the one team, if you were to pick a team that was going to win a championship within the next 5 years of the Wisconsin teams out there, it was the Bucks. That was the majority of you. We did have quite a few also saying for Badger football, a couple of college football playoff appearances, no national championship picks. But we did have a few of you picking that the Badger football team will make the college football playoff at least a couple times in the next 5 years. Remember, it's going to be expanded, so maybe that's part of the thinking there too. It's like, all right, expanded, yeah, they're going to get in. Boom, easy. Luke Fickell era, yeah. Not a lot of optimism surrounding the Packers in the next 5 years and the Brewers in the next 5 years, which honestly, to me, not that surprised. For the Brewers, I had it that, and maybe this was just too optimistic, but I said between 2 and 3 appearances in the postseason, no World Series. I think there's this really decent chance if the Brewers stink it up this year, which I hope they don't, and I think they'll be a playoff team. If I had to do a January pick right now, I think they'll compete. In fact, I'll bring up what ESPN with their power rankings, Buster Only, just put out there for Major League Baseball. I think they'll compete for a playoff spot this year, so I don't think that they will be selling by the trade deadline. But I think in like 2024, they could be completely different. They may not have Woodruff and Burns, and maybe they don't have Willie Adames. So how are they going to look? That's kind of the big unknown. And then the other, with Green Bay, it's like, oof. You want to talk about a great mystery right there. Maybe to kind of narrow it down a little bit more, if we wanted to do the 5-year plan for Green Bay, would you predict that Jordan Love is the quarterback 5 years from now in Green Bay? So January 19th, 2028, is Jordan Love going to be the starting quarterback, or will be the starting quarterback for the Packers, or maybe still being the starting quarterback, depending on how you want to phrase it? Will he be that guy? I said I think he does, which means that he obviously would have had to have done something on a positive note to get a new contract and still be playing 5 years from now and being that starter for Green Bay. That something positive had to have happened. So if I narrowed it down to you, do you think Jordan's going to be that guy 5 years from now? What would you say? Yes or no? Yes or no? Let me know. All right, you can let me know. So Major League ESPN, they've got their MLB power rankings already up. We know spring training starts next month. So they've got their power rankings already. Who's number one as the season approaches? They're a little right up here. We're about halfway through winter, and the top free agents have signed, meaning it's time to look ahead toward the start of the 2023 season. Where does every team stand heading into spring training, despite not being at the center of this year's free agency? Are the reigning World Series champions atop the rankings? Did the Mets and the Padres offseason acquisitions help push them to the number one spot? Well, let's see how they all played out. Number one, they got the Houston Astros. Number two, the Atlanta Braves. Number three, the New York Yankees. Number four, the New York Mets. So you got a couple division teams right there with Atlanta and New York in the top 5. They've got the Padres at number 5, and then the Dodgers at 6, so 2 division teams right there too. High on Toronto again this year. Remember last year, they were high on Toronto. A lot of people were. They gave a nice shout out to Dalton Varsho on here. Toronto added 3 experienced left-handed hitters, trading for outfielder Dalton Varsho, who likely will hit in the middle of the batting order. Well, shout out there for Mr. Varsho. Philly at 8, Tampa Bay at 9, Seattle at 10. So where are the Brewers and such? Well, St. Louis is at 11, Cleveland at 12, and they have the Brewers at 13. Which I'll be honest with you, I was surprised they actually put them that high. Minnesota's at 14 right behind them. So the Cardinals and the Brewers are the top. If you're looking at the NL Central, those are the top two teams based off ESPN's preseason power rankings. They're right up. Maybe Seattle simply wasn't a good fit for Jesse Winker. Maybe going from one of the sport's most hitter-friendly ballparks to one of the least played a factor. Whatever the reason, Winker struggled mightily offensively last season. He produced an 888 OPS through a 413 game sample while with the Reds from 2017 to 2021, punctuated by a 949 mark in the final year, but contributed only a 688 OPS in his first and only year with the Mariners in 2022. That's a 200-point drop-off. Now the Brewers are hoping they can recapture this greatness. They parted with second baseman Colton Wong in early December in order to buy low on Winker. And if Winker can get back on track, the Brewers just might challenge for a division title. So Jesse Winker, they're kind of maybe picking him as a little bit of a wild card for the Brewers this year. Will he be that right fielder? Will he be mostly a DH? Assuming, that Christian Yelich is still going to be, your everyday starting left fielder out there. But is he kind of maybe the wild card in this thing for the Brewers? It's what it kind of seems like in their little right up there about the Brewers. But I'm surprised they kind of had them that high. I thought maybe closer to the 20s or something, like low teens, bottom end of the teens there. But at least right now they kind of like him. Or kind of like the Brewers. And we know their pitching staff, right? They've got depth. All things considered, all things healthy. They've got probably one of the better top 3 starting rotations in all of baseball. We went through the was it one of the projections last week? It was on I think it was MLB.com, where they had like Corbin Burns with like another Cy Young award type season. They were high on Aaron Ashby having a breakout year this year too. So, if we get normal performances from like a Corbin Burns and a Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta stays healthy, you add in an Aaron Ashby, and then maybe if a Wade Miley can kind of capture some of that magic, I would say on paper, that's a decent starting rotation, right? And maybe a little bit of an unknown with the depth or with the bullpen out there. But they've got experienced guys that they can plug in there, whether that experience has come by starting or, doing a little bit of bullpen relief here and there. And I know Craig Counsell yesterday at their Hot Stoves and Cold Brews event talked about, relying on the younger guys to kind of step up and giving them that shot and seeing what can happen out there. So we might see that at some point in the season, maybe in the early part of the season. We know William Contreras at catcher. Everybody loved that move in the offseason. Rowdy Tellez, everybody's picking him to have a bounce back year with the banning of the shift. I shouldn't say bounce back year because he, obviously showed that power, but mostly talking about maybe a higher batting average and that sort of thing. Rowdy Tellez seems to be a guy that a lot of people are kind of pointing at to have those better averages, along with like a Christian Yelich, by the way. If you haven't seen his video, he's got a new swing. Posted it on Instagram, no toe tap. And then we'll kind of see how the rest of it plays out here. Garrett Mitchell, we saw him at the end of last year. Can he be a full-time contributor? And we kind of there's Keston Hiura. Man, a couple years ago, we were so pumped and excited about Keston Hiura. So pumped about Keston Hiura. And now it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle here. What's his plan? What are the Brewers' plans with him? I know they agreed to an arbitration deal. But like, how does he factor in for playing time and such? All right. I know we talked a little Willie Adamas too. Like, how much do you put him as a priority to sign for a long term deal? He said yesterday that the Brewers have not approached him yet, at least from what he's known. But he does want to stay in Milwaukee, and he is open to a long term type of deal there. But I don't know if it's like a pecking order. What the Brewers are thinking. Are they still hoping that they can maybe lock up one of their starters? I know they've got some infielders there, like a Bryce Terang that maybe they view as their future shortstop. They got a couple of options there. They've been talking about all offseason about giving the youngsters more of a shot. Maybe that's going to happen in a couple years because they do have a club control for one more year for Willie Adamas. So maybe they're not so gung ho to lock him up for a long term extension because they have that control. And again, if things don't work out this year and it's ugly and it's clear that they don't have any type of chance to make the postseason, are the Brewers going to be big time sellers by the trade deadline when it comes up this year? Because they've got players that teams would love to have, and they could probably make some big hauls. I think this season is going to be, well, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out because I think they've got the talent to contend for a postseason spot. But if it doesn't work out, do they take advantage of Willie Adamas having that club control that increases his price? Do they move on from their starters and such? Because we know teams would pay a lot of money for Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. Some other comments out there looking at the Jordan Love question. It's about 50-50 if we're looking at some of that stuff out there, some of the comments and texts and tweets and posts and all that. About 50-50 with, do you think Jordan Love is going to be the starting quarterback for Green Bay in our 5-year plan? In our 5-year life plan, do you think Jordan Love is still going to, I shouldn't say still, is Jordan Love going to be the starting quarterback for the Packers? I said yes. Right now, it's pretty even if I were to kind of eye it up and add it up that way. If you don't think he is, if you're one of those who said you don't think he is, do you think it's like coming from the draft this year or maybe next year? Free agent? Have a little fun with this. Make some bold predictions if you want. Okay. All right. Tell you what, we're going to take a quick break here and then we're going to catch up with Mr. Jake Bolks, Wisconsin Conservation Warden. I think we're going to talk a little sturgeon, spear sturgeon. Anybody do that? Has anybody done that? I've never done that. I'm curious. Has anybody ever gone and like speared a sturgeon? What's it like? If anybody listening right now, I'm kind of curious. Okay. I'd be open to trying that. And I've never witnessed anybody doing that either. Never seen it. So, but we're going to talk to Jake a little bit about that. And if you have any last second questions that you would like to ask Mr. Jake Bolks, text it to me on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line. That's going to be the quickest. 715-830-1912. So we'll take that quick break and then do our outdoor tidbit after these quick messages. Winter weather has hit us again here in the Chippewa Valley in Wisconsin, and it's maybe having an effect on your vehicles too. So if something does happen with your vehicle, or maybe something has happened with your vehicle, you just know that you can go to ASAP Used Auto Parts here in Eau Claire to help you out and save some money on a high quality used auto part. Maybe you need a new battery, maybe you need some new tires because the roads have been a little rough. Or maybe you're just looking for an oil change. Well, that's ASAP Used Auto Parts, baby. Because with these winter roads, if they did cause me to get a repair, I know I can save that money on that high quality used auto part. And I know they will help me find that exact part that I will need or what I'm looking for. Chances are we're probably going to have some more weird weather too. We're only in the middle of January, and that weather could affect our vehicle. Just know, though, that if you need help with finding a part, getting some tires, or a battery, or even just getting that oil change, ASAP Used Auto Parts is there to help you out. Give them a visit today at 1330 Menominee Street in Eau Claire. All right, it's time for our outdoor tidbits with Mr. Jake Boakes, Wisconsin Conservation Warden. You being safe out on the roads this morning, Jake?
I am. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. So, one thing I wanted to ask you, I was kind of perusing, the DNR's Facebook page and such, and I saw, I think it was like Winnebago got some sturgeon spearing tags coming up, or the deadline's coming up there. Is that correct?
Yeah, the season starts here in about 2-3 weeks. So you got to get your tags, got to have everything good to go here. Everyone, I'm sure people out there are already getting ready and checking ice and checking clarity and everything.
So is that, I know I mentioned Winnebago, but is there like different types or different parts of the season where maybe people can do it more around in our area, or is that mostly out of our area?
No, so in our area, there's no sturgeon spearing or even an open season this time of year. Um, So on the Winnebago system, and they call it the upriver lakes, which is like the little Lake Butamore and stuff like that, Poigan out there, they can spear sturgeon. It's usually like the second Saturday, and it runs for a couple of weeks or until the quota's capped. Around here, we have a open hook and line fishing season from the first weekend and Saturday through the end of the month. Otherwise, sturgeon fishing in the Chippewa Valley is closed almost year round. There is a catch and release season on the St. Croix River on the Minnesota-Wisconsin boundary, and that's because Minnesota opened it up. So you can go over there and catch and release sturgeon this time of year through the ice.
So this might be a stupid question. I got a couple stupid questions for you, but
No stupid questions out there.
can you open water or anything? Can you use a spear for any other type of fish if you really wanted to?
Yeah, you can spear rough fish. So like your carps and technically catfish are considered rough fish now. But your carp and just anything that is defined as a rough fish in our regulation, there's a lot of native species, a lot of rough fish in that. Gar are considered rough fish, stuff like that. But yeah, you can spear them almost year round, but there are some restrictions on where you can do it. You can't do it too close to a dam, and there are some prohibitions here and there. But for the most part, yeah, you can use a spear if you want.
Would that be similar to like I don't, first of all, if there different regulations with spearing, but would that be similar to like the when people use a bow and bow fishing?
Yeah, they're pretty similar. There are a couple exemptions, or I guess there's a couple things you can do with the bow that you couldn't do with the spear, and vice versa. There's a couple things you can do with the spear that you can't do with the bow, but that's getting into the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing to do is we have our basic fishing license regulation pamphlet, but we also have one that's called, I think it's like netting, spearing. There's another regulation like that, bait collection and everything like that, that shows all like the turtle regulations, turtles, crayfish, netting, trapping, bow and arrow, or like spearing with a spear,
Gotcha.
So there are a lot of different little regulations. There's little things that you can do out there that a lot of people might not be aware of.
Uh, so I got to ask you this too, since we're talking about spear. I don't know. I remember watching this, seeing this, and I think I was in college, but it involves one of your former Minnesota Vikings, Jared Allen. Jared Allen
Oh,
is a big
yeah.
outdoorsman. Do you know where I'm going with
Yep.
this, with the spearing with the elk sort of thing?
Yep. Yep.
Can you do that in Wisconsin for, like, if I want, bow hunting season or something? Can you use a spear to do that?
No. So in Wisconsin, if you want to harvest big game, which, like deer, uh, elk, or bear, you have to use a rifle or a shotgun. Basically, you got to use a firearm with a single projectile,
Okay,
or a bow and arrow.
so you
When it
can't.
comes to spearing, the only thing we can spear in the state of Wisconsin is sturgeon during the really specific sturgeon spearing season on Lake Winnebago, and then basically when it comes to like rough fish or frogs or some of those other herpetiles or whatnot, there's some spearing allowed in that world. But as far as like, you couldn't go out and just spear a turkey, you couldn't go out and spear a deer or anything like that.
That's got to take some skill, doesn't it? Because he did it with an elk, didn't he, in that video? Like, you got to hit it
I
perfectly.
thought it was like yeah, I can't remember if it's like a mule deer or an elk, but yeah, you got to be patient, and you got to get pretty lucky. You
Yeah.
had a deer right, or an animal right under you. I think he was in a tree, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, like standing in a tree or something. I don't even know if it was a tree stand he was in, but he was up there in a
No,
tree.
I think like in a tree.
Yeah. So obviously, some states you can do that with.
Yeah, so nothing really like that's allowed in Wisconsin. But if you have interest in niche types of hunting or sport fishing, you can always check the regulations. And then if you don't find the answer, because they don't have the answers to everything in there, you can call our general info line, and if they don't have an answer for you, they'll forward you on to a local warden. We get a lot of interesting questions. Someone one time, I got forwarded a question about if someone can fish like with a fishing pole, like a hook, line, and a pole, but they wanted to be in scuba gear underwater.
What, really?
Yeah, so they wanted to like do normal fishing, but like they were sitting under the water, not on top of the water. And there's nothing that prohibits that. I mean, you can fish whether you're in a boat or on the shore or sitting under the water if you want. So we get some interesting questions from time to time.
I'm assuming maybe because he wanted to see the fish react to the lure, and I don't know, but that's interesting. All right.
But it is, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people have interesting ways they want to enjoy the natural resources, and that's cool. They just, especially in something like that, that's not your most basic thing that everyone does. You definitely want to do a little research to make sure what you're doing is legal.
Right. No kidding, man. I've been seeing some people like even pulling muskies through the ice there, Jake. How has the ice fishing season been going on your end?
Um, I mean, I haven't seen a ton of trucks on a lot of lakes, which is a good thing because there's plenty of ice for us to be out there, but it's definitely, there's some good parts, there's some bad parts, there's some solid ice, there's some like crappy white ice and stuff like that. Depending on the lake and part of the state, some people are doing pretty good. Around here, it seems like it is that kind of midwinter lull right now. So, people are still catching some big panfish or big walleye here and there, but I haven't heard of anyone just going out there and day after day slapping fish around.
Mm-hmm.
But people are out. It's nice. There's plenty of ice to be safe on. So, for the most part, it's going pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like, the weather's kind of been weird for our area too. One day it's like warm and raining, and then, you get a snowstorm, or, December it's all that cold. So it's kind of been all over the place too. I was kind of curious if that's affecting, trucks on the lake or anybody's ice fishing.
Yeah, people are still getting out there. I would say it's probably affected some people that just want to drive their trucks to wherever they want. So there's a little less activity, but on the weekends I've been going out there on my sled while patrolling or wherever, even on Altoona here. And there's still tons and tons of people that come out, and just you gotta do a little extra legwork if you don't trust your truck out there and stuff like that. And that's not a bad thing.
Right. Jake, hey, appreciate it as always. Jake's going to be in studio next week for a little long form Q&A. So if you have any questions, make sure you send those babies on over to us, and we'll get it over to Jake, and it'll be good to catch up, do a little ice fishing, maybe some trail talks, and all that fun stuff too. Heck, I mean, I got my card in the mail with my turkey hunting week for the spring, so that's
Yep,
going to come up here pretty soon too. So we'll have lots
it
to
is.
catch up
It's
on.
sooner than you think. Yeah, that's for
Awesome,
sure.
awesome.
You got time for one quick plug?
Yeah, definitely go for it, man.
So this weekend is they call it Think Smart Before You Start. It's a long thing. Long story short, it's called Operation Safe Sled. Long story short, the wardens and a bunch of sheriff's departments are going to be out more than usual this weekend enforcing OWI activity on the snowmobile trails. So that's obviously one of the biggest issues that we have with snowmobiling each year is people driving too fast, people driving under the influence of drinking or drugs, and then getting in an accident and either hurting or killing themselves or someone else. So this weekend, expect to get contacted by a lot of wardens, sheriff's deputies, a lot of law enforcement out on the trails and stuff like that. We'll be working late and different stuff like that. So just a reminder, I mean, you should be doing it every weekend where you shouldn't be drinking and snowmobiling, drinking excessively and snowmobile and stuff like that. But this weekend we'll be out there in force. So just as a heads up.
Good note. Good note. Jake, hey, appreciate it. And be safe out there, buddy. And looking forward to
Yeah.
having you in studio next week, bud.
Yeah. Excited to see you next week.
Awesome. All right, Jake, we'll talk to you soon. Okay, sir?
Yep. Yep. Have a good one.
There you go. Jake Bolks, Wisconsin Conservation Warden, joining us here for our quick outdoor tidbits. Again, if you have any questions that you want to ask Jake, this is now your time to do it. You don't have to tell us your name, too, if you want to kind of remain anonymous. You can email it to me. You can text it, tweet it, Facebook it. Jake's going to be in next Thursday for a little bit of a long form Q&A. So this is for all of you out there. All right, we're going to take our final break here this morning, cover the bases, all that fun stuff. Last call for any Thirsty Thursdays. If you want to do some shout outs, get those on over. And we'll cover some other topics we may have missed or want to revisit. We'll be back after these words. It's now easier to order your favorite coffee from your favorite local coffee shop, Cabin Coffee in Altoona. You can now download the Cabin Coffee app and place your order, buy and manage gift cards, and earn rewards all in one spot. So the next time you're craving that Twister Frappe, a Cabin Club, or whatever your favorite menu item is at Cabin Coffee, download the app. Just download the app and order ahead so you can enjoy your favorite Cabin Coffee items today, or quicker, I should say. So, all right, this is interesting. We got a texter who works at Zacco Sports Center. Has a customer up in Shell Lake that does the scuba diving fishing. Showing me videos. It's crazy seeing it, especially in some clear water when you get good views of it. I was blown away the first time he told me about it. I also mentioned that they got the boat show sale going on right now. If anybody wants to pick up scuba fishing, nice little plug right there. Got any four-wheelers that's maybe on sale over there, sir? Might be in the market for one of those. I would love to see a video of that. Like, I'm just trying to I would love to see. I think that would be so cool to see, like, the fish kind of come in and following your lure or whatever, and then grabbing it and such. I think that would be so cool. That'd be so cool. All right, let's cover the bases here. So we talked a little bit about the Bucks, and kind of mid-season. They're a little bit past the mid-season, if we're doing the exact math or something like that. But I didn't notice it till during the break, and I found CBS Sports actually did grade the NBA teams right now too. For Milwaukee, they gave them a B minus. They gave them a B minus. It doesn't quite feel fair to grade the Bucks right now. It says Chris Middleton has played 171 minutes. The movie Titanic is longer than that, and Middleton will go a long way towards fixing their 24th ranked offense. But there are troubling trends here. Giannis is shooting below 60% on two-pointers for the first time since Mike Budenholzer took over in 2019. The defense, which looked really good in October and November, is quietly ranked 17th since December 15th, right around the time Brook Lopez's block rate dropped from Defensive Player of the Year territory to still good, but not eye-popping. Does anybody besides Bobby Portis want to create some offense off the bench? Ultimately, the Bucks are going to be okay. They have the best player. They have the best playoff defense. But any notions this team might have had to simply inserting Middleton in the lineup and steamrolling the Celtics team they nearly beat without him a year ago are gone. There are kinks to be worked out here if Milwaukee plans to make it through the East. All right. So there's one thought on it. That was the question we kind of asked. Do you think this Bucks team currently right now has what it takes to get through the East? You got that trade deadline that's approaching, right? So is it maybe getting more production off the bench, maybe getting more offense off the bench? And, who's that going to be? I keep saying it, but I feel like the Bucks are going to make a trade. I feel like they are going to make a move. Just don't know really who that's going to be. It sure seems like they love Crowder, but is that going to be enough to bring in some offense? We'll see. Other stuff on the covering the bases here this morning. We were talking a little bit about the 5-year plan with your favorite teams out there. Again, majority kind of, if there was one team that a lot of people picked that you could see winning another championship in the next 5 years, it was the Bucks. There was some, couple, or I should say more than a couple, a few of you picking college football playoff appearances for the Badger football team. Not a lot of love for the Packers and the Brewers in the next 5 years, which I totally understand and totally get why. We all kind of think that. I'm kind of the same way there. But it was kind of good to get some of that feedback from a lot of you and getting your picks there. It was a lot of fun. So thank you to all of you who were able to do that this morning. We talked to a lot of brewers as well with the hot stoves and cold brews event yesterday. Willie Adamas saying that they haven't had any conversations about a long-term contract. whether that means there won't be any, or maybe the Brewers are just like, you know what, we've got control yet for next year. We're going to see how this year kind of plays out. We'll see. But looking at some of the latest MLB trade rumors, apparently the Twins are rumored to be looking to make a trade. Luisa Reyes from the Athletic, it looks like, says the Twins continue to push for a better roster here in the short term. Pablo Lopez of the Marlins is mentioned as a possible target. Currently, the Twins rotation: Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, then Bailey Ober and such. So, yeah, Twins might be looking for a more starting pitcher. I'm trying to see if there's anything there with the Brewers, any more rumors, and not really. It's going to be confusing this year if Brian Anderson's playing and you got Brian Anderson making the call on TV. Brian Anderson, we mentioned it the other day, but the Brewers picking him up from the Marlins. 29 years old, played 98 games, slashing 221, 311, 346. Numbers took a dip the last 2 seasons, but from 2018 to 2020. He did hit 266, 350, and a 439. In 459 at-bats in 2019, he had 33 doubles and 20 homers. Mostly plays third base and right field in the majors, but he has spent some time in left field. Looks like he has a little bit there at first base and shortstop. Not a whole lot, but again, a guy that provides a little bit of flexibility and versatility, right? That's in the Brewers' wheelhouse. Finding that player that can play multiple positions on there. What else do we got on here? We don't have a Bucks game tonight. We won't have that. They don't get back in action until Saturday. We did mention big night for the Blue Golds last night for men's and women's basketball. Both Blue Gold teams picking up wins. The women's team now taking over first place and sole possession of the WIAC Conference. So big night at Zorn Arena for the Blue Gold teams there. We'll get a little bit more in depth on some local sports net with Brandon tomorrow when he pops in. Can't believe it's already Friday tomorrow, but I'm not going to complain about that. We'll catch up with Dr. Austin Crow too with Inside the Training Room. I want to ask Dr. Crow. So Ryan Jensen, the center for the Bucks, he played in that playoff game. Okay, first game of the year, but so his knee injury that he suffered right before the season, that he didn't have surgery. He didn't have surgery. He ended up tearing his MCL, his ACL, and his PCL, and he flipped his meniscus. I had a fracture and another little bone chip thing. It was a major injury. And I was fortunate that I was, as I could be with the way the injury happened, that I didn't have to have surgery. And it was able to heal on its own in 5 months. Some call it dumb, but I'm a football player, and football players play football. That was his quote after the game. I got to ask Dr. Crow about this one. About a guy who tears his MCL, his ACL, his PCL, flips the meniscus, has some bone chips and a fracture, and the guy didn't have surgery. Oh, man, well, that's awesome about that tomorrow. I saw that after the game. I'm like, ooh, got to remember to ask him. That's nuts. The NFL announced its the teams that will be playing internationally next season. Green Bay will not be one of them. The league announces that the Bills, Titans, Jaguars, Chiefs, and Patriots will be playing internationally next season. The Packers don't face any of them on the road in 2023, so no. Seems like there's going to be no international game for the Packers, because Packers, remember, with that odd number, they've got 9 road games in 2023 and 8 home games. I doubt Green Bay will be giving up a home game for an international game next year, considering they've got more road games than home games. So, guess you don't have to schedule that. They'll be back overseas, though. They'll be back at some point. I almost wonder if they're just going to do this every couple of years, where that extra home game is going to be an international game for Green Bay, if they're going to work it that way. We'll see, though. That'll be up for 2024. All right, we're going to run out of time here. So big thanks to everybody who sent in some tweets, texts, comments, Facebook posts, whatever it may be. Love chatting with you all, with your opinion, your insight, your analysis. So keep that on coming, all right? Keep it on coming. If you haven't checked out the latest episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford, do yourself a favor, or do me a favor, I should say, and check it out, subscribe, and give it a solid rating if you don't mind over there too. But tomorrow, we'll do a little inside the training room. We'll catch up with Brandon Berg. We'll make some picks for playoff weekend, divisional weekend. Who's going to advance to the conference championships? It's going to be all the 1 seeds, all the favorites. 2 seeds going on there too. Think there's going to be an upset at all this weekend. Can the Giants upset the Eagles? Can the Cowboys upset the 49ers? Can the Jaguars somehow beat the Chiefs? Can it happen? We'll hit that up tomorrow as well, and then we'll take a look at that big Bucs game against the Cavaliers on Saturday too. Be safe out there. Drive safe. Deep Peanut Danettes. They're up next. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. We'll be back at it again tomorrow morning, just past 6. Talk to you then.